It's good to be gathered together again in our proud capital city. Our final national gathering before the European elections in just a few weeks' time. This city, although among Europe's youngest capitals, has been at the centre stage at key moments in our nation's history. Its youthfulness betraying a millennia of the Welsh national story. It was in this city that the great Ifor Bach embodied the Welsh spirit by scaling the walls of Cardiff Castle with his bare hands to confront the mighty Norman overlords. Ifor Bach may have been small in height, but he was great in determination. And so must we be too. We know that our capital and our nation have at times shone brightly on the international stage. We have demonstrated incredible resilience, resolution, and ambition, whether in the field of sports, the arts, and yes, the economy too. In September, Scotland has the opportunity to step permanently and confidently out of the shadows. And friends, when the people of Wales want it, Wales will follow. Plaid Cymru firmly believes that Wales can and will shine and will not be left behind. Just like Ifor Bach, we've always breached those walls in the past, from generation to generation. It's the unlikely story of a country's triumph against the odds. Over the decades, we've faced seemingly insurmountable challenges, and we've faced them together as one. Last week marked the 35th anniversary of that awful night when so many of us thought that Welsh nationhood had been lost, when so many thought that that was one wall too many for Wales to breach, when our country rejected devolution by a landslide margin of 10-1. Gwyn Alf Williams feared that we had voted ourselves out of existence. But within 2 decades, that poll was undone. Our nationhood has been secured. We proved that we could bounce back. Today, we face new opportunities and new challenges. We will be required to summon the same strength and determination that have carried our hopes before. The Party of Wales is firmly fixed on transforming this country to enable our people to win for themselves a better future. We're a restless party, never standing still. We're driven by our belief that Wales can and will do better, that the next generation can and will have it better than the last. It is precisely that Welsh drive that led to the unlikely election of the daughter of a Rhondda bus driver as the leader of the Party of Wales. You know, both my parents were told not to bother sitting their 11+ exams. Their future had been predetermined. A cap had been placed on their potential. But they did not place such limits on their children. The 11+ may now be history, but children in Wales today face a different kind of barrier, a barrier in the form of a Labour government that has failed children in all parts of this country. Fel Cymru ei hunan, dyw ein plant ni ddim yn cael cyrraedd ei llawn potensial. Wedi 15 mlynedd o dan reolaeth llafur, mae 4 awdurdod addysg o dan fesurau arbennig a dyn ni'n dal i lithro i lawr tablau PISA. Mae'r prif weinidog wedi dweud ei fod e wedi tynnu ei lygad oddi ar y bel. Does dim strategaeth gyda fe. Mae'n hollol amlwg. Os ydyn ni'n cario ymlaen i wneud pob peth yn yr un ffordd, byddwn ni'n cael yr un canlyniadau. Mae'n amser i gredu mewn rhywbeth gwell. Ac wrth edrych i'r dyfodol, mae Plaid Cymru yn benderfynol i sicrhau dyfodol i'r iaith Gymraeg mwyn iddi dyfu. Mae hyn yn golygu buddsoddi mewn system gofal plant sydd yn sicrhau cyflenwad digonol o ofal trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg i sicrhau bod y cenedlaethau nesaf gyda'r hawl i ddechrau a'i bywydau yn ddwyieithog. Bydd agwedd Plaid Cymru at addysg yn wahanol iawn i beth sydd gyda ni nawr. Mae gyda ni athrawon ardderchog yn y wlad yma, sy'n rhoi safon uchel o addysg un plant. Yn wir, mae arweinwyr gyda ni yn y sector sy'n cyflawni dros ein pobl ifanc. Gai gymryd cyfle i llongyfarch Cyngor Ceredigion ac arweiniad Plaid Cymru yn y sir sydd wedi cyfrannu at adroddiad arbennig gan Estyn. Rydyn ni'n gwrthod system addysg sy'n gosod ysgol yn erbyn ysgol, athro yn erbyn athro. System lle mae bandio yn bwysicach na chanlyniadau. Mae Plaid Cymru eisiau agwedd newydd ar sail cydweithio, nid cystadlu. Rydyn ni eisiau rhyddhau athrawon i gael amser ddatblygu ac amser i ddysgu, fel ei bod nhw'n gallu cydweithio a rhannu arferion gorau. Bydd Plaid Cymru yn gweithio gydag athrawon mwyn lleihau'r baich. Yn lle gweithio o'r top i lawr, byddwn ni'n ymddiried mewn athrawon ac yn rhoi rhyddid iddyn nhw benderfynu sut i wneud hyn. Byddwn ni'n rhyddhau athrawon fel ei bod nhw'n gallu bwrw ymlaen gyda'i gwaith o ddysgu. Wales has a First Minister without a plan. He is also a First Minister without the backing of his own party. On local government reorganisation, on income tax devolution, on hospital centralisation, his party is publicly protesting in open defiance of his leadership. And doesn't it tell us all we need to know about the state of the unionist consensus in Wales today, that the two main unionist parties are split and in open warfare on a matter as important as our country's powers over the economy? Recently, we've seen how both the Labour and the Tories have revealed not just their internal splits on devolution, but also where power lies within their parties. And surprisingly, it's not in Wales. We've seen the Secretary of State for Wales slap down the Tory Assembly group leader on the income tax lockstep. Then, in the Welsh Grand Committee, we saw Labour's shadow Welsh Secretary undermining the First Minister by saying that there should be no income tax powers for Wales at all. When our country needs leadership and vision, when Wales needs leadership, we cannot expect the London parties to deliver. From the outset, Plaid Cymru has engaged fully with the Silk Commission. We've been constructive, and we've been prepared to meet others halfway to get at least some of the vital job-creating tools that Wales needs. Indeed, I welcome the publication of the second part of the Silk Commission report this week. It has required us to negotiate and compromise. We would have, of course, preferred to have gone further. At last, our country has the opportunity to gain meaningful powers in a variety of areas. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Araith ap Gwilym for what he has achieved for our country through the process of the Silk Commission. Diolch o galon, Araith. And be in no doubt, conference, without Plaid Cymru, none of this would have happened. We have won the argument on the devolution of taxation, the devolution of policing, and conference, after decades-long struggle, we've won the argument on putting Wales's water in Wales's hands. It is vital now that we get on with implementing the recommendations as soon as possible. But the incoherent response of unionists to both Silk reports undermines the whole process. As the leader of the National Party, I want to be clear with the people of Wales. Do not think that our ambition for our country is limited. I want to see the people of Wales have control over all of Westminster's responsibilities and powers over our nation. Wales deserves and needs nothing less. Our need for a more prosperous, successful and sustainable Wales cannot wait for a painstaking process of tinkering around the edges of devolution by the London parties. Someone once said that Wales has an assembly because it is a nation, but the powers of that assembly are limited in case Wales acts like a nation. Well, in the referendum of 2011, Wales spoke and behaved as a nation. Devolution can no longer be a process that needs a pit stop at every juncture. This year, in the context of tectonic change in these islands, we cannot allow Wales to be a mere spectator. Wales must be a full participant in the process of a changing Britain. That is why I insist that when Scotland becomes the third sovereign state of the British Isles, Wales must have a voice. When Scots make arrangements for weapons of mass destruction to be removed from their country, Wales should be able to insist that not one of those warheads is relocated to our shores. The UK is an unbalanced state, socially, politically, and economically. The opportunity must be taken after September to rebalance the British state. I advocate a new Council of Ministers for the UK that will comprise of all the nations. This council should be a forum for seeking agreement on matters that are not devolved, giving a voice to all the people through their governments, a recognition of the sovereignty of the people. But talk alone is cheap. We must be empowered too. The Tories, especially in the lead up to the European elections, are keen to talk about UK opt-outs from burdensome EU decisions or decisions deemed to be at odds with the UK's interests. It may surprise you to hear that I'm not opposed in principle to opt-outs, but I'd like to start closer to home with a right to opt out for Wales from unjust and unacceptable UK policy decisions that affect us. Real empowerment would mean a Welsh opt-out and a Welsh say on big decisions like welfare and warfare. No more bedroom taxes forced on Wales. No more... No more young Welsh men and women being dragged into illegal wars against the express will of the people of Wales and their government. Wales should be able to say no and mean no. A forum such as this could be an adequate interim measure until our nation is ready for a more permanent settlement as an independent country. Plaid Cymru is ambitious for Wales, and we trust the people of Wales with the big decisions. We've seen how Project Fear in Scotland has sought to bully instead of presenting a positive case, and how they've roped in others, like Commissioner Barroso, who did the cause of European cooperation no good at all when he intervened in Scotland's democratic process. No unelected European Commissioner has the right to tell the people of a democratic nation that their express will be ignored. You won't bully Scotland, and you won't bully Wales either. And it's precisely that kind of intervention that highlights why Wales needs a strong Plaid Cymru voice in Europe. That strong Plaid Cymru voice Wales has been able to count on since 1999 through Jill Evans. Who else will speak for the Welsh national interest? Who else will advocate an EU for the people? An EU that is a nimble, responsive partnership of nations. An EU that will listen to Wales. We have to be in it to change it. It is the Party of Wales that has inherited the mantle of progressive, outward-looking politics in Wales. We may well be often frustrated at the lack of agility of the European Union, but we're fully committed to our continued membership as an active participant. I know that many people in Wales who share our vision of a European Wales, of a green and progressive Wales, will feel despondent in the current climate that surrounds the British-European debate. But I urge you today not to let that despondency result in staying away from the polling booths in May. European elections are notorious for their low turnout. But if despondent Liberal Democrats and Greens, unsure of what to do, add to that huge stay-at-home number, it will only benefit the Europhobic right. I appeal to them to back us in May, so a socially progressive, socially just, environmentally sound voice can prevail over the din of despair. This could very well be our last ever European election if we do not make our voices heard and our votes count. Do not forget what is at stake at this election. Do not forget all that will be put at risk if dangerous right-wing Europhobia is victorious. Ffrindiau, mae gennym ddau dewis. Dau ddyfodol posib I frwydro dros Gymru lywyrchus, rhydd o fewn yr Undeb Ewropeaidd, neu gweld ein gwlad yn cael ei thynnu lawr gan bleidiau Llundain. Rydw I a fy mlaid yn dewis y llwybr disglair I Gymru. Our businesses rely on £5 billion worth of trade with our EU partners every year. Our country has benefited from investment in our infrastructure and our communities, with more on the horizon. More than 1 in 10 jobs is directly dependent on our membership of the EU. That's 150,000 reasons to vote Plaid Cymru in this May's election. This year, of course, marks a significant centenary for Europe. The autumn of 1914 marked the beginning of a mindless period of mass death, of unspeakable butchery and suffering. It is grotesque that elements of the British state seek to use this centenary to glorify their worldview. There is no glory in war, least of all the First World War. One lesson for all of us in this centenary year is that despite its many faults and frustrations, the Europe of 2014 is a far better place for its citizens than the Europe of 100 years ago. Sowing the seeds of division in our country and in this continent has no place. And I say to the purveyors of division today, I say to UKIP today, your politics has no place in this country. Not now, not ever. Your values are not the values of Wales. A vote for UKIP is a vote against Wales, a vote against the Welsh national interest. We cannot and will not let their ugly politics divide us in May. And I tell them, here and now, that we are one Wales. Not immigrant versus local, one Wales. Not rural versus urban, one Wales. Not Welsh-speaking versus English-speaking, one Wales. Not north versus south. Friends, we stand together in the face of division as one Wales. More than ever, our nation needs to pull together. Our communities need to pull together. 4 years of Tory-enforced austerity, the dismantling of the welfare state and a cut of £1.7 billion to the Welsh budget have plunged families to the breadline, have put fear into the poor, and they seek to divide. Conference, Wales can't rely on others to champion our national interests. But the people of Wales know that Plaid Cymru can be trusted to put Wales first every time, every day. I was proud to unveil earlier this year my new shadow cabinet, Wales's cabinet in waiting. As a team, we've hit the ground running, unveiling policy papers and proposals that will help to transform our country. Our plans to recruit 1,000 extra doctors to the Welsh Health Service through innovative incentives sharply contrasts to the current government's managed decline. We're consulting on a radical new approach to tear down barriers between health and social care, to put an end to bed blocking, and at last to put the patient front and centre of health and social services. We're determined to end the perverse situation where an energy-rich country like ours is burdened with fuel poverty. We demand control over our natural resources so that the wealth created from them benefits communities and families, with bills kept down, not just for 20 months, but for good. Natural resources in national hands. And we're rich in creativity too, and that's why we've renewed calls for the devolution of broadcasting, so our creative industries can flourish, boosting our economy and enhancing our cultures. We've given Wales a voice on matters where for too long we've been ignored. On migration, it's high time we federalise decisions so that we have a Welsh migration system that works for our country, our priorities, our needs. And just yesterday, I was proud to unveil our vision for a modern childcare system that will end the postcode lottery provision, aiding parents to get back into the workplace and giving our children the start in life that they so thoroughly deserve. Plaid Cymru is not standing still while others pretend to stand up for Wales. Each and every one of our policy initiatives is driven by a motivation to release the potential of a country and match the aspirations of a people. We are getting on with the job of fighting for the Wales that people are yearning to see. Above all, we have a laser focus on turning around our country's economic performance, and it will be for the long term, a durable recovery that will last and that will be universally felt. You see, all this talk of recovery now will be meaningless if it follows previous patterns, where the southeast of England and the bloated London region hoovers the industry and talent from the rest of the UK. This must not again be a hollow recovery for Wales. Earlier, I mentioned the need for a political rebalancing of Britain, and there is need too for the economic rebalancing of the British state. There's a danger of an upgraded growth forecast resulting in little more than a spreadsheet recovery, where the social and economic condition of our country are somehow masked and do not reveal what is for many a reality. 0 hours contracts, a race to the bottom in wages, extortionate bills for essentials such as public transport and energy. A structural realignment economically is vital. That is why the Party of Wales advocates a publicly owned energy company, so prices are always kept as low as possible. A public rail network that puts people ahead of a fast buck and is affordable as well as reliable. A business culture where innovation is encouraged and small and medium-sized enterprises can flourish. I have spoken often of my desire for Wales to be at the forefront of a new industrial revolution, as it was in the past. To do so, Welsh businesses must be at the heart of everything that we do. A narrative of pitting private sector against the public sector has emerged recently, a meaningless division invented to suit narrow party political interests at Westminster. Let me tell Welsh entrepreneurs today that a Plaid Cymru-led Welsh government will be a business-friendly government, not just listening, but acting to help your businesses grow and helping you to create even more jobs and opportunities. Over 80,000 Welsh businesses will benefit under our plans to overhaul the business rates system, with more than 70,000 being removed from paying rates altogether. For too long, there has been a disconnect between the opportunities provided by European funding and the long-term economic benefits. Billions of European funds have been spent in recent years. Billions more will come. But Plaid Cymru wants a change in culture and a strategic shift in how European funds are put to use. Last week, we were given a chilling reminder of the scale of the task that faces us. GDP in West Wales and the valleys has declined again, from 65% of the EU average to 64%. Our valleys communities deserve better than this. It's time. I want to maximise the potential of Welsh businesses and expertise and talent for the good of the entire nation. And that is why Plaid Cymru will begin a wide-ranging consultation with businesses and others as to how we can transform our economy by maximising the possibilities of European funds, especially private capital resources from the Welsh and UK governments. The new cycle of European structural funds is underway, and we may never get the same level of European funding as we will get from this year to 2020. I will therefore be consulting on establishing a new body outside of Welsh Government. This new body will be private sector led and will proactively seek opportunities to invest European funds, other public funds and private capital for the maximum long-term economic benefit, for the rebuilding of Wales. It will establish a presence for Wales within the investment sector to match ideas with investment inside and outside of Wales. It will transform the current mentality of risk aversion and the current culture of administering rather than driving. The new body will bring together the best and the brightest, working with our universities, trades unions and communities. For too long, our approach to using EU funds especially has been fragmented, lacking in direction and lacking in focus. And where has it got us? The new agency that I propose will be overarching, nimble and will seek out opportunities and realise them. It will not sit back and wait for things to happen. That's Labour's way, not Plaid Cymru's. The Labour government may have given up on driving up our GDP, but Plaid Cymru will use every tool in government to add billions in value to our economy, so that at first we reach the UK average for prosperity, and in time we will exceed it. The Party of Wales is the party of business and innovation, and we mean business. A healthy business environment goes hand in hand and not in contradiction with fair conditions for workers. The countries with best levels of productivity are those where workers are respected and treated well. It's a central aim for Plaid Cymru to end the absurd practice of the state subsidising poor working conditions and poor levels of pay. And I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Plaid Cymru-led Gwynedd Council in increasing the wages of the lowest paid workers, moving towards the living wage. This is very welcome. This is very, very welcome, and indeed it represents Plaid Cymru's drive to increase wages and boost living standards. I very much hope that the rest of the public sector, and indeed the private sector too, will follow this lead in working towards a living wage for all. 250,000 Welsh workers currently receive a wage that is below the living wage. Reducing this number will be good news not just for low-paid workers, but for our economy as a whole and for the public purse. Putting business in a new position of leadership and overcoming Wales's low-wage economy form the central plank of Plaid Cymru's new business deal. Just as I intend bridging gaps in living standards and pay, so too must we bridge the gaps between our communities and between the quality of services across the country. The headlines that greeted the Williams Commission report did not reflect the damning indictment its findings were of the Labour government here in Wales. I can't think of another example anywhere in the world where a government has been advised by a commission it appointed itself to effectively rewrite its own programme of government. Outcomes and targets were deemed to be inconsistent and unclear, a very clear reflection of the Welsh Government under Labour. And it is totally unacceptable that a difference of up to 1 year exists in transfer of patient times between one council area and another. But what struck me more than anything else in that report was the light that it shone on the poverty of aspiration that exists under Labour rule. It said that reaching the average had become the aspiration in so many different fields. That is not good enough. And let us not underestimate the real danger posed by the Labour government's performance. There are some opinion polls that suggest an increase in anti-devolution feelings. Labour's poor performance threatens the very future of devolution. But when did you last see an opinion poll asking people if they wanted to abolish the Westminster Parliament? They don't ask that question because when you don't get the services you deserve, when your children's education isn't adequate, when your economic prospects are hampered, you don't question the institution, you remove those in charge of the institution. The people of Wales yearn for a change of direction, and conference only a change of government in Cardiff Bay will deliver that. We need a new culture where striving for excellence becomes the norm across all departments and all sectors. Wales will always have its detractors who will tell us that we're too small, too stupid, too weak to reach such levels of excellence. But I tell them that once in a generation, a moment presents itself where a group of determined people have the opportunity to transform the course of a nation. We're about to enter an electoral cycle as a party that will begin in May, but will conclude with a new Welsh Government in 2016. When the historians of tomorrow reflect on this period, let us make sure that it is this moment, here and now, that they point to as the moment the course of our country changed for good. The politics of hope must triumph this May. Wales must triumph this May. I began this afternoon by recalling how Ifor Bach scaled an apparently impregnable wall in an audacious pursuit of justice. They were physical walls. The walls we face today collectively as a nation are walls that only exist in our minds and are embodied only when we lack the confidence to achieve. These are the only walls that stand between where we are and where we want to be. There is no wall too high to stop the will of the Welsh nation. No barrier so insurmountable to stall the tide of national aspiration. Let us rise to this moment together.